Less than 24 hours after a miracle 20-point fourth quarter in a near comeback for the Phoenix Suns, Ish Wainright is rewarded seemingly with an opportunity for a roster spot. Frank Kaminsky is gone. We'll break the move down and take a look at the standings on today's episode of Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a contributor at Suns.com, as well as Dime Magazine, and a credentialed reporter covering this Suns team for the past 5 seasons. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen today and every day as we make our way toward the playoffs. Just a couple of games left for the Suns, just about 1 weekend left for the NBA. A lot going on, so scroll down, hit subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening on, if you are on YouTube. I have a goal here for the YouTube channel. I'm looking to get to 1,500 subscribers by the first game of the first round of the playoffs. That's about a week and a half. We're at 1,300 right now. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell every Suns fan in your life to get us there. Just hit that subscribe button. That is all that it takes. Ish Wainright was the star of the show against the Los Angeles Clippers for the Suns last night, and we didn't talk about it on the show very much because Aaron Edwards and I started our game recap during the third quarter because we figured, hey, nobody's playing in this game. The Suns are down by like 30 points. Let's just hit record. Let's have some fun. Nobody's going to be too pressed about the result of the game. And then Ish Wainright turns around and proves us wrong by becoming the story of the game. And so we have to talk about him. But we also have to talk about him because the Suns seemingly very much clearly, I think, actually agreed with everybody's excitement over Ish Wainright. He will be the likely beneficiary of the Suns cutting Frank Kaminsky. They made that move this afternoon at around 3:30. Kaminsky has been out with what the Suns have called a stress fracture since the fall. He has only played in, I believe, like 9 games for the Suns this season. 9 games, yep. And so they cut him. And Ish needed that in order to be elevated because two-way players, which is the type of contract that Ish Wainright is on, are not eligible for playoff games. They can't play. They can't be active under NBA rules. So in order for Wainright to be available, be somebody that could actually take the court for the team, they don't have to cut him. His contract doesn't expire. It's a 2-year contract in a lot of cases. So he's still able to be around the team. He just can't play. But now with this open roster spot, the Suns can elevate Ish Wainright from a 2-way contract to a regular NBA contract. They could make that contract multiple seasons. It will basically just be a normal contract from now on if they choose to do that. In all likelihood, they will. I believe the deadline is already passed to sign free agents who would then be eligible for the playoffs. That was the buyout market situation, which did not have a lot of players on it this year. So this is kind of the last thing teams will do to elevate their players to full contracts away from these 2-way deals. But it's worth looking back at Wainright in general. So last night, he was obviously the star of the show, as I and all of us very clearly observed watching him. He said something interesting that I think really speaks to his journey yesterday when he was asked about his performance. He got to speak to the media post-game, and he said, quote, "I'm a believer. I believe that my work is going to pay off. I'm busting my butt, and it is paying off. For him to drop a play like that for a 2-way player," he's talking about Monty, "it's crazy. But he believes in me, and hey, my name was called, and I do what I had to do. Trust my work, trust my instincts, trust everything." He goes on to say, "Anything is possible. In my eyes, we're all competing, not just for roster spots. We're competing for everything. But if something happened, he's still my brother." Talking about Lundberg and how Lundberg is in a 2-way and he might be elevated, etc. He said, I don't really think about that, but I'm here to help him. He's here to help me. I'm getting better. He's getting better. If he ever does get to play, I'm going to be there to help however I can. So right now it's just, he's my team. He's my brother. I don't care about the rest of it. I love all of it, so I'm just going to keep reading. He goes, this is all from PHNX, Gerald Bourget, who does awesome work over there. Words can't describe it. I'm one of the only ones in my family that has been able to do this. It's taken me a long time. I'm 27 and I'm a rookie. I didn't come straight out of college. Having an amazing coach, having vets that believe in me, I'm not taking anything for granted, and anything can happen. So that first quote is the one I wanted to focus in on, just about his work and the work paying off, because the thing that's crazy to me watching this guy play is, well, not just in general over the course of the full season, but lately especially, is he plays like a dude who, like, you can see the work. Like, if you compare what we saw from him when he would get it on the floor here and there early in the season to now, it is night and day. It is incredible to watch. Like, the mechanical motions used to look awkward, and it's been, 5 months since the team signed him, and you can see the fluidity just there. Like, he had a reverse sort of like up and under layup off glass in the game last night. Everybody was very impressed with the threes off the catch, off of motion, where he's running, catching, shooting. These are all, like, he had the defense from the jump. That's probably why the Suns signed him, was his physical profile and just the ability to play defense with that body. But the offensive stuff, the motion on the court, there are just people who you feel like when you see them, like, I don't know if that's ever going to be a basketball player. Like, his body just doesn't have the rhythms of an NBA player. And I'm not saying I thought that about Wainwright, but you could have made that argument. And he has completely flipped that over. The reason that's especially impressive or noteworthy even is that this guy was not supposed to be an NBA player necessarily. He went undrafted in 2017, coming off of a year at Baylor where he played both football and basketball, caught 2 touchdown passes for Baylor and he was also a Big 12 all-defense team on the basketball side. The football team, he played tight end, caught 2 touchdown passes for Baylor, who's, they're not like a walkover type of team, and Baylor basketball has been pretty good lately as well. And he, again, goes undrafted in the NBA and then decides to go be on an NFL roster. So he goes to camp with the Buffalo Bills in 2017, but does not make the final roster. So then switches back to basketball, goes on to play for the Nuremberg Falcons in Germany. And then he bounces around Spain and I believe like Sweden, I want to say he played in. And 2 different basketball teams in Germany, and then French team. And then eventually gets a non-guaranteed deal, a summer league deal with the Raptors, gets cut, and then ends up with the Suns. Honestly, mostly because this is opinion, but the Suns' director of basketball operations, his name is Ryan Resch. He's a part of this front office, a very small front office. He was a graduate assistant at Baylor, and prior to joining the NBA. I don't think it's a coincidence that their time there overlapped, and that's probably just the only reason that they had an awareness of this guy in the first place. So for that mechanical and like fluidity and the rhythms of the game stuff to just kind of snap into place for a guy who has not been incredibly committed to basketball forever is pretty incredible. I mean, he played it in high school. He went to prep teams. He was a top 75 recruit. This is not a nobody player, but it is not somebody who just cruised into the NBA and was, just needing an opportunity. Like, even he was going back and forth between basketball and football, needed a break. This has been his break. And for all intents and purposes, we can assume he's about to get an NBA contract, and that's a guaranteed one at that. And that's, it's remarkable. It's pretty incredible. We'll talk more about Wainwright, I think, as time goes on. I'm also going to predict the Suns' playoff rotation as a result of this move, so we'll get to that. But I also want to talk about Frank Kaminsky, so that's where we'll go next. First, though, guys, today's show brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info. throughout the year, whether it's the Masters right now, whether it is the NBA playoffs in the not too distant future. We've got baseball. So if you want to get, honestly, one of the most fun things to bet is baseball team wins. It's just, you can really get good value there. And it's so random and fun. And there's so many games that it's like, yeah, I'll do over 92 over here. I'll do an under 75 over here. And you just have some fun with it. BetOnline is your continued source for sports wagering info, including live betting, esports, scores, podcasts, news articles, all of it. Head to the website today, guys, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Here is a sample bet. I'm going to look at the Masters here. Futures, the Masters, odds to win the Masters after round one, which is when I'm recording this. I got some money on Scottie Scheffler heading into the tournament. I still like that. He's not the favorite. He's at plus 700 now. Joaquin Niemann, I was watching the Scheffler and Woods feed on ESPN Plus today. Joaquin Niemann looked really good. He had an incredible chip shot to get a birdie on, I don't even know what hole it was, and stayed under the whole day. He looked pretty good. Tiger's at plus 2,500. Everything at BetOnline. That's it. Any sport, any prop, any future, whatever you need. BetOnline, where the game starts. Frank Kaminsky, quickly here. Stress fracture ruined his season. 2 out of 3 years now where Frank Kaminsky has been hurt. And then if you throw in the fact that the second season, which was the healthy one of his 3 in Phoenix, he didn't start the year with the team. He was not signed to a new contract after the bubble, and then signs with the Kings on a training camp deal, gets cut. Then the Suns are clearly not married or much excited about it all. Damian Jones, they cut him, who was on a non-guaranteed contract. Kaminsky comes in and replaces him. And so Kaminsky doesn't even join the team until a bit of the way into things. So none of his seasons here, Kaminsky's, were normal by any means. And it's a bummer because this guy found a home with the Suns. Like he was, if you remember, I'm sure a lot of you do, is a top 10 pick. And then with the Hornets, they just don't even bother. I think they didn't even extend him a qualifying offer. And so he wasn't even a restricted free agent after his 4th season. He just left. And I thought his 4th season was good. I mean, we looked into it a lot when he was coming here because it's like, well, who knows what this Monty Williams guy is going to do? Frank Kaminsky's an interesting name at the very least. Can he get rejuvenated? And his 4th season in Charlotte was not bad. He shot the ball pretty well. That first season in Phoenix, he was not very good, in my opinion. Just learning how to play a different role. And he was a 4 a lot for he went back and forth between the 4 and the 5. At the 5 for the Suns, I just don't think he's a 5. It's the classic thing, right? He's a tweener. He was defensively couldn't really be a 5. I mean, defensively he could not be a 4. He wasn't great at any position. You probably want him at the 5 to simplify what his responsibilities are. Offensively, he can be a 4 a little bit, but as the NBA changed, he became somewhat of a Ryan Anderson type, right? I mean, a guy who just his shooting was no longer enough. But at that said, I think as a 5, as a center, he started to carve out a role here. Like defensively, I think he was playable as a bench player. I mean, he was playing real minutes early this season, most of the way through last season. He was starting games for the Suns last season, and they were winning. So that counts for something. I mean, in my opinion, if you can play a role for a team that continues to win, you're not a damaging player. I mean, you can split the numbers any way you want. He's not an elite anything, but he's good enough, and he was on a winning team. When coming out of Charlotte, he was a poor player for a bad team, right? I mean, he's really flipped his career around. I hope the injuries do not pose a problem. I hope that he can find his footing somewhere. It's going to be difficult for him after, such a turbulent few years to find a home. It's probably going to have to be somewhere like Sacramento or a team that has some roster spots to burn that can take a chance. He may not get a guaranteed deal, but I think he's proven he can play. And if he can come into next season healthy, I think that's all you really hope for. Unfortunately for him, that's kind of where he's at. And look, like, he is a good culture dude. He sacrificed. Like, you never felt like Kaminsky was chomping at the bit to take over some spot in the rotation, or he's pissed off that he didn't get this minute here or that minute there. And every time he was called upon, he played well. Like, he always was ready. He executed. The guys seem to love having him around. He comes in Game 6 of the finals last year, and he's giving effort. He's doing enough to make Monty like apologize basically for not playing him more, like, in the finals. So he will be missed here. I mean, he will be a part of this story, a weird part of this story, of this team kind of building its way up. But wish him the best. And it's time for Wainwright will give them something different. Wainwright will give them the ability to have a small ball center, to do a little bit more defensively with versatility. And so I get the move. It makes a ton of sense, but it's still, somebody's blessing in the NBA is inevitably going to be somebody else's, a pause in their trajectory. So that's what Kaminsky's facing, and we'll see where it goes. I want to predict the Suns' playoff rotation here, with now the news that Wainwright will at least be on the roster, Elfrid Payton seemingly staying on the roster, everybody healthy. We'll break it all down. First, though, guys, today's show brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the planet. My favorite protein bar. Because, look, I'm pretty picky. Like, of course, I've had other protein bars in my life. I, find other sources of protein that aren't necessarily bars. Like, flavor-wise, texture-wise, like, you've all had bad protein. Built is nothing like that. They have the classic bars with flavors like double chocolate, salted caramel, mint chocolate, or mint brownie is what it's called. Those are some of my favorites, but maybe you like the other stuff. Maybe you're a coconut or a strawberry. A ton of delicious flavors. And they have Built Puffs, which are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. Flavors for that include cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, or my personal favorite, lemon cheesecake. Everything's delicious. That's the bottom line. And you're never going to go over 5 grams of sugar, never going to go over 200 calories. And of course, each and every one will be packed with protein. At Built Bar, they're all about taste. They make it delicious first, then they figure out how to make it healthy, and they pull it off every single time. I'm seeing brownie batter exclusive right now, yellow chirps for Easter time on the website here. Always something new, always something delicious. So go to Built.com, guys. Check it all out and use the promo code LOCK15 when you make your purchase to get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, let's close things out with some guesses at the Phoenix Suns playoff rotation. Again, everybody healthy. No Dario Saric, of course, but Frank Kaminsky now cut, so he's not on the injury report. The injury report heading into Utah on Friday, which it seemingly looks like the Suns will not be resting anybody, although they technically could announce that late. Nobody's listed with an injury at the very least. The injury report's clean. It literally just has Saric on it. So add in Wainwright there. Consider that Aaron Holiday is no longer seemingly in the rotation. And the tinkering with Bismack Biyombo, the tinkering with Torrey Craig. I'm going to break down how I see things playing out here. So Chris Paul, starting point guard, no doubt about that, of course. He has averaged this season 32.8 minutes per game. If you remember, prior to his injury, he was playing a ton. At times, 40 minutes, whatever. Very, very ridiculous. Part of why everybody was so thrilled that he would get a little bit of a break when he broke his thumb. I don't think he's going to get 40 minutes a night in the playoffs. I feel like 32 to 34 is probably what we will see. I'm looking back at what he was at in last year's playoffs, which was Chris Paul, 34.2. So I feel like that'll be pretty similar this season. Maybe a little bit higher at times, because I think he's had a stronger season this year in terms of energy level, spryness. He's also been able to withhold his energy in some. I just feel like physically, I don't know. I feel better about him. So maybe 34 to 36, and then behind that, you're going to see Cameron Payne playing the other 12 to 14. I just can't say that Holiday is going to get minutes. I don't think that's realistic right now. So 2 spot, you have Devin Booker. He was at 40.4 minutes per game in last year's playoffs. In this year's regular season, he is at 34.4. So I think we should say 38 to 40 for him. And then you're going to have Landry Shamet behind him. But here's where things immediately get a little bit interesting. So I think we're going to see minutes with Payne or Shamet playing with Paul and Booker. So last playoffs, we saw a lot of that with Payne, where Payne suddenly they were playing these 3-guard lineups with Payne in there. He was not great in the playoffs last year. I think his decision-making can be erratic. He's somebody who, if he was just a shooter, you probably feel pretty good about him out there, but he's not just a shooter. He turns the ball over at inopportune times. So what I'm saying is you could actually see Shamet fill that void maybe even more than Payne because he can handle the ball. Shamet can handle the ball. We know that. If he's making his threes, he has some size as well. I think, effectively like Payne and Shamet to me, maybe Shamet's a little bit of a worse defender, but it's not as if either one of them are out there to be stoppers, but they can at least survive. So I think you could see Shamet get more of those 3-guard lineup minutes. So if Booker's playing 40, you would say, okay, well, Shamet's going to play 8. But I actually don't think so. I think we could see him play some wing minutes along with Booker. So I'm going to put Shamet at 10 to 12 minutes and Booker at 38 to 40. At the 3 spot, Mikal Bridges is going to continue to be an Iron Man. He's at 35.2 minutes per game in this year's regular season. He, in last year's playoffs, actually surprisingly did not play a whole ton. In the playoffs last year, Mikal was at 32 minutes. So I'll put him in for 36 this year. I do think that there will be times when, maybe some foul trouble when he's really guarding some tough guys, Luka Doncic or Steph Curry or John Morant. I mean, I don't know what it will be, but I could see that happening like it did last year. He only averaged 2 fouls per game in the playoffs last year, but that's probably the thing that I could see suppressing his minutes. But overall, I think he's going to be built for more than he was last year. He's more consistent. So 36 for Mikal. Here's the thing. So I will put Cameron Johnson in here. He's not just going to play the 3. He will play the 4 a little bit. I don't think Torrey Craig will have a massive role in the playoffs unless there's just these times when the Suns really need to play some versatile defensive lineups, but I think the majority will go to Cameron Johnson. He was only at 21.1 minutes per game in last year's playoffs, and Craig was at 12. I think you'll see that go to like 26, 28 minutes per game for Cameron Johnson, and maybe 6 to 8 per game for Torrey Craig. Because this season in the regular season, Cam Johnson has been at 26 minutes per game. I think it'll be at least that. So Craig, and I could see him being a DNP in some games here. Ish Wainright, I don't see being a major factor unless, again, there's these moments, foul trouble, defensive versatility becoming a problem. Maybe there's just some matchup, Giannis or I don't even know, Draymond Green, who is just giving the Suns massive issues, and then you want that versatility. But I'm not penciling in Ish for any real minutes. Bismack Biyombo is another guy here where I'm not going to pencil him in for any minutes, but he could definitely play a role in matchups like that. He will definitely be somebody who guards Giannis Antetokounmpo if and when that matchup arises for the Suns. With Jay Crowder here at the 4, he this season in the regular season is at, 28.2 minutes per game. In last year's playoffs, he was at 33.1. In last year's regular season, he actually played less per game than he did in this year's regular season. So what I'm saying with Jay is we saw last year Crowder jumped when the Suns needed him with guarding Anthony Davis, guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo, guarding LeBron James. He bumped up. So I'm torn here. This is actually one of the more interesting ones. Some of like the Torrey Craig, Ish Wainright, Bismack Biyombo stuff is pretty interesting. I think the Shamet and Payne stuff is pretty interesting. But more than anything else, what role does Jay Crowder play and how many minutes does he play? Because we've been talking since basically like since Cam Johnson yammed a dunk on PJ Tucker's head. I think we've all kind of been, eyebrows up, like, when is this going to finally flip? And so, could Cam be a guy that is closing games for the Suns by the end of this year's playoffs? I think so, but I also am somebody who really, really does not ever underestimate the value that Jay Crowder has defensively. Like, you can say that Cameron Johnson has improved immensely on the defensive end and is at least like a C plus type of defender, if not significantly better than that at times, although he's been a little up and down since returning from his injury with the quad contusion. You can say that, and you can also still say that Jay Crowder is probably the second or third best defender on this Suns team, depending on where you put Ayton, maybe Paul. I think I would probably say he's right behind Mikal Bridges as the second most impactful defender on the Suns. Between his help defense, the ability to handle a bunch of different matchups, his toughness, the fact that he can grab a rebound when you need him to. He's somebody who can get double-digit rebounds in a game if they're there, if he's focused on that, if it's a matchup that really requires that level of intensity on the glass. So it's very interesting, and I think a lot of it's going to be matchup based. If the Suns are playing the Mavericks in the second round, and it's more of a who can grind it out, really, because the Mavericks are this defense plus Luka type of team now. I think you maybe do see Jay Crowder in there, as somebody who could switch on Luka in a pinch, who can, rotate and guard the pick and roll effectively. But if it is, a second round, a conference final series against, or let's say even a first round series against the Timberwolves, that could be a game where a series where in some games suddenly, Cat and Edwards are both going off and you just need scoring. And you could see a game maybe where Cam Johnson closes it for you and plays 30 minutes and Jay plays 22, because he's not really going to guard Cat. He's not really going to guard Anthony Edwards. Maybe you just say, hey, we want that shooter out there. We want Cameron Johnson out there. So that's very interesting. My prediction here is that Jay plays slightly less than he did in last year's playoffs. So I'll say 30 to 32 minutes per game instead of that 33 that he was at. And Cam Johnson, I will say, plays 28 or 30. So they'll be right there together, I think, when you really average it out, when it's all said and done. And last but not least, the center rotation. Last season in the playoffs, DeAndre Ayton played 36.4 minutes per game. I mean, I did not look at that one prior to saying it, and it was a reminder of what a freaking monster Ayton was, playing 40-plus minutes a lot of the time, no backup in sight, especially when Saric went down in the finals. Honestly incredible. But they do have, of course, JaVale McGee now. I went over this previously, though, when the Suns played a couple of big men back-to-back, where there will be games where McGee just doesn't play much at all, if at all. Maybe it's Biyombo, maybe it's Torrey Craig, maybe it's Ish Wainright at that 5 spot behind him, depending on the foul trouble and matchup and everything else. Because time and again, Torrey Craig has not, JaVale McGee has not been in the rotation when push comes to shove in big postseason moments. In the Lakers, by the conference finals, he's basically not playing in the bubble. For the Warriors, he's down to 8 to 12 minutes in really big finals games or conference finals games. That time will come. And I think that's what's so smart about that Biyombo move. It's what's smart about getting Craig back, about getting Wainwright elevated. It's just going to be options, because there will be matchups where the Suns can afford to play JaVale McGee. If the Suns play the Nets in the finals, okay, yeah, put JaVale McGee in there. If they play the Heat in the finals, I think he could survive in that matchup. If they play let's see, in the conference finals, if they're playing Memphis, I think JaVale McGee will be able to survive easily in that series. But there's other ones where he won't be. So I would put him at about 8 to 10 minutes per game. I would put Biyombo, like when it's all averaged out, I think we'll probably see Biyombo in like the 4 to 6 range, but there very well might be some games where Biyombo's playing 20 minutes out of nowhere and McGee's not playing at all. So it will be very fun. Thank you for allowing me to geek out there, but it's, depth it only takes you so far. I mean, at some point you got to pick which guys are actually going to get out there. And it's kind of one of the fun things about the playoffs is suddenly you have JJ Barea guarding LeBron James being this integral, necessary part of your team, right? It's bizarre, but it's what happens. So hopefully that was useful for you guys. No time at all before we are talking about postseason basketball. I'll be recapping the play-in games next week to talk about who the Suns might be matching up with. I will be talking about I'll be previewing the series, although we don't have a lot of time to do that because the game will be Friday night and then game 1 will be Sunday. So I don't know. I don't know what to expect here. I'll have to do a lot of bonus episodes. So hit that subscribe button, guys. Big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen today and every day. Now, go make Locked On NBA your second listen to catch up on all things NBA, across the standings, playoff matchups, all of it. And I will talk to you guys on Monday.